What's up, everybody? Welcome to Paiper Zombie Productions, home of the one, the original ZTV. I am Paiper Zombie, your host as always. And on today's episode, we're going to be getting into the newest pitch on the block, the first of the year, actually, believe it or not, even though the year is almost over. And that is going to be 1031. And I'm going to do a little something different with this pitch than I did for Black Friday and They Still Live. When I did those followed what's called the synopsis format, and that introduces the plot, the characters, gives you a quick rundown of how the movie will play out, including how it ends. And originally, that's not how I used to do it originally, though. Originally, I used to write up what's called a treatment. And what a treatment is essentially a short story walkthrough of the entire movie. So it's a lot more extensive than just your basic synopsis. But I traded out doing treatments in favor of doing the synopsis format because treatments, like I just said, are a lot longer. Where a synopsis can be like 1 page, a treatment can be up to 80 pages. So imagine that. Nobody wants to really sit and listen to me talk for that long, I don't think. So that's why I went ahead and I switched to the synopsis format. But what happened is that I had subscribers who wrote in and told me that they liked the original treatment format better. So since I'm always about interaction and everything on this station, I like to go ahead and give everyone the opportunity to experience the treatment format since I did not put that on this station. And you guys, after you check out this format, you can compare it to the other format of the other two pitches and see which one you like better. And then based off of what you guys say, that'll be how I do pitches going forward. So, like I said, treatments can be long, and this one is. So rather than have you guys sit for almost an hour straight, I've decided to go ahead and break this pitch up into 3 20-minute parts. And I'll start doing the first one tonight, the next one will be tomorrow, and then the other one will be Monday night. However, if once I get to the end of this first part tonight, if you all want me to keep going to the second part and until the third part, then I will. But if not, then we could go ahead and use that as a stopping point, and then we'll just go ahead and we'll just jump right back into it tomorrow. So unfortunately, I do not have any footage to show for this project. I looked and looked around, but I wasn't able to find anything like I was for the other two projects. So rather than just have you guys stare at a static image for the whole time, I went ahead and tried to create a little something to try and be stimulating to the eye while we do this. So, like I said, we got a lot to get through and about 20 minutes to get through. So, I'm going to go ahead and we'll just jump straight into it. So, without further ado, I would like to go ahead and present to you guys 1031. We open on a Friday evening at a popular nightclub. Here is Deborah Myers, age 22, out with her girls, getting their party on just like they do every Friday night, and Saturday night, and Sunday night, and every night of the week. It's the party girl life for these young ladies, and it extends from the liquor all the way down to the men. On some nights, Deborah and her friends go home single, but on other nights, some or all of them leave with a man. Tonight is a leave with a man night for Deborah. She's found herself a fine one. Deborah and her fine man return to his place and exchange multiple expressions of passion. Afterwards, the fine man takes Deborah home where she finds her bed and crashes. 5 weeks later, while at work, Deborah has an unexpected bout with stomach sickness. She makes the decision to visit the urgent care after work, as the stomach sickness is just one of a growing list of strange things that her body has been doing lately. She wonders if maybe, just maybe, she might have caught something from one of her partners. What Deborah finds out is that she has caught something, but it isn't an STD. It's a baby. Her body has been acting unusually because it's going through the early stages of pregnancy. Later that day, Deborah calls her big sister Penny and tells her the news. It's news that Penny is not at all surprised to hear. Being well aware of her little sister's ways, she knew a call like this was inevitable. The only surprise is just that it took this long to come. However, Penny doesn't share her disappointment with Deborah. She instead shares her happiness. She asks Deborah what she plans to do. Deborah, knowing that she can't afford to raise a child on the salary she's making, replies that she wants to have an abortion. Penny reminds Deborah that despite the circumstances, abortion is not an option. That is not the way their family does things, and it's not the way their family's gonna start doing things. This provokes Deborah, prompting her to ask her old, wise sage of a sister what she would have her do instead. Penny suggests that Deborah have the baby and give it up for adoption. Deborah, however, feels that if she's going to go through the process of carrying the baby and having it, then she might as well just keep it. Penny was hoping that Deborah would say this, and she knows what to say next. Aware of Deborah's financial situation, Penny offers her sister the option to move in with her. This way, Deborah can save more money and, after the baby is born, have a more solid foundation to stand on during the search for a job with better pay. Deborah is reluctant. She doesn't want to move into her sister's house. Although Penny's husband Lou is a very nice guy, Deborah feels like she's going to be giving up a huge slice of her independence. Isn't she supposed to be the adult? Isn't she supposed to be the one that's taking care of herself, not letting her sister and her husband help her do it? But Deborah knows that it's not just about she anymore. It's also about the new life she's carrying inside of her. So, after a few days of debate, she chooses to take her sister up on the offer. Deborah retires from the party girl life and, in order to put Penny's mind at ease, begins going to AA meetings a few weeks after moving in. A little over 8 months later, Deborah gives birth to a healthy baby boy that she names Michael Nathaniel Myers, and she loves him with all her heart. So much so that it's hard for her to part from him when she finally starts her new job. He's what she thinks about all day at work and who she can't wait to get home to afterward, her baby boy. But Michael isn't the only male in Deborah's life. Over the course of her pregnancy, she gets to know another AA member who happens to be 13 years older than her at 35 by the name of Ronald Strode. The two start off as friends, but over the months, that friendship develops into a relationship, a real one, which is a big first for Deborah. But Ronald doesn't know that. All he knows is that he loves and is in love with Deborah. She's the best thing to ever walk into his life. The second chance he thought he'd never get. That's why, a few months after Michael's birth, Ronald asked Deborah to marry him. Ronald promises to be her knight in shining armor always, and the kind of man that Michael can look up to as a father. Deborah happily and lovingly accepts. 7 years into that matrimony, Ronald is involved in an accident on his job. The damage it causes to his right arm and leg impairs their physical ability to the point that no job will hire him. As a result, Ronald is forced to be on disability for the rest of his life. The money from disability is something, but it's less than what Ronald was bringing in when he was working. It forces Deborah to have to take on a second job in order to make ends meet. What Deborah doesn't know is that as the months and eventually years pass, Ronald has been hiding something from her. His inability to provide as he wants to for his family has caused him to fall into a deep depression. and its deepness has lured him back to the bottle after years of being sober. Unfortunately, Ronald has never been a happy drunk. He's a mean one, an abrasive, militant, and incredibly cold one. Ronald knows this, and in the beginning, he would wait until after Michael had gone to bed to drink. But as time wore on and the depression worsened, so did Ronald's dependency, and he began to drink while Michael was still wide awake. The change Michael sees in Ronald when he's drinking is confusing at first. To him, it feels like he's dealing with an entirely different man that only looks like his stepfather, because this different man plays with a completely different set of rules than his stepfather. If burping was excusable and might have even caused one-uppance before Ronald was drinking, it will become inexcusable and enough to earn Michael a heavy slap across the face, then banishment to his room for improper behavior. Forgetting to do things, which would have gotten a verbal reminder and the chance to correct that inaction before Ronald was drinking, would get the belt as a reminder and the chance to correct that inaction with a stinging rear end once he was drinking. Messing up on any task, even something as menial as the spelling of a word during practice for an upcoming spelling test, would also evoke Ronald's wrath once he was drinking. And what did Ronald tell Michael before and even after he discovered that Ronald was drinking? That all the punished actions were always his fault. Why? Because he was a bad son. Only bad sons forgot to clean out the bathtub after they got done using it. Only bad sons didn't appreciate having a nice hot meal prepared and served to them that they couldn't even make sure that all the dishes they washed were actually clean. And there was no room in the house for a bad son. The psych trip works. Michael is only 8 when all of this begins, and he wants nothing more than to please the only father he's ever known. But Ronald's military-grade routine doesn't end there. When he hits Michael, he's always sure not to leave any lasting bruises. He even takes a shower and makes sure that his breath has no trace of alcohol on it by the time Deborah comes home. And to keep her from finding out that he's slipped off the wagon, among other things from Michael, he buys his stepson's absolute silence with a threat that would terrify any child to hear from a parental figure. If he ever wanted to prove how bad of a son he was, he would tell. And if he did, then that was something called treason. And the punishment for treason was that Ronald would kill him in his sleep. Deborah also doesn't know that Michael is being bullied at school. As one of a handful of African American kids that attends the entire school, he's been the recipient of some very unethical treatment from his peers, particularly from 4 boys. One is the same age as Michael and is a former classmate of his. The other 3 boys are a grade above Michael, with one of them being the older brother of Michael's former classmate. Since the 3rd grade, these boys have made Michael's life at school a daily trial, from calling him racial slurs all the way to chasing him around the schoolyard in order to capture him so that they could put a noose around his neck and hang him from a tree. That was the day when Michael fought back. Although he'd only been defending himself, Ronald hadn't seen it that way. A good son would have gone to a yard duty or a teacher or the principal. Now, it was on his school record that he was a fighter, and no matter whose fault it was, fighter equaled trouble to all those white people in control at his school. So since he wanted to be a fighter, he could have a fight with the belt when they got home. That's the last time that Ronald uses a belt on Michael, because a few days later, Deborah finds out that she's pregnant for the 2nd time. Ronald quits drinking the very next day. He even goes out and is able to score a part-time job. And 8 months later, he and Deborah welcome their first child together into the world, a little girl that they name Lori Ann Strode. But Lori isn't the only new lady in the house. A few months after her birth, Ronald's 15-year-old daughter Judith from a previous relationship has to move into the house due to her mother kicking her out for continuous bad behavior. Deborah doesn't know that Judith also becomes physically and verbally abusive towards Michael. She doesn't like the fact that her father went out and had 2 more children with another woman after her. And she definitely doesn't like the fact that they have a happy home to live in while she was kicked out of hers. It's because of Judith that things are set into motion on one particular Halloween night. She lies to her father and Deborah by telling them that she will take Michael out trick-or-treating so that they won't have to cut their already twice rescheduled date night short. In truth, she plans to send Michael out trick-or-treating by himself so that she can take advantage of having the house mostly to herself. That way, she can invite the boyfriend she's not supposed to have over so that they can get up to some tricks and treats of their own. The only problem with Judith's plan is that Michael has never been out after dark by himself. Despite the fact that he doesn't like her, Michael would rather go with someone he doesn't like than go alone. Kids get snatched sometimes. But Judith doesn't care. She pretends to get ready to go, but once Michael is out of the front door, she closes and locks it. Having already locked the back door previously, she tells Michael to have fun and stay out for at least an hour. And if he tells, she will make him sorry. Knowing that Judith's mind is made up, Michael reassures himself that it will be okay if he goes out alone. It is Halloween night after all. There will be plenty of other kids and parents out trick-or-treating. So, he slides down the face mask of his clown costume into position and heads out to collect all the free candy he can. Halfway through collection, Michael comes face to face with the 4 boys who bully him at school. You see, they never stopped bullying him after that incident with the noose. The week of detention each got and the inability to sign up for any sports for the rest of the school year made sure of that. They've made it so that Michael can't go anywhere on the school grounds alone, because he never knows where they'll be waiting to try and catch him while he's away from watchful adult eyes. Since Michael wore his costume to school, the 4 boys know who it is immediately under that clown mask. They chase after Michael, corner him, and since they're not on school grounds this time around, they attempt to beat him up. Not being on school grounds works the same way for Michael too, and once again, he fights back. He manages to rough up 2 of the boys good before he's overwhelmed. And with their anger and hatred burning like a candle in a jack-o'-lantern, the boys don't let up until they see blood. And once they do, they steal all of Michael's candy and leave him. With his costume ripped, body hurting, and nose bleeding, Michael makes his way home. All the while, he's not aware of what's happening upstairs in his young psyche. He doesn't know that it's on its last legs in the struggle to keep itself from breaking. All the constant stress it has endured over the years has not only taken a heavy toll, but it's made it harder and harder for it to recover from attacks. This most recent attack is going to take some time. Upon making it home, Michael finds that Judith forgot to take the spare key hidden in the backyard. He uses that to let himself into the house. As he's making his way across the dark kitchen, Judith's boyfriend enters the kitchen from the other end and turns on the light. Both boys jump in surprise at seeing one another. Judith's boyfriend observes Michael's beat-up state. Michael observes that Judith's boyfriend is stark naked. Judith's boyfriend asks Michael what happened, but Michael doesn't get the chance to respond. The sound of Judith coming downstairs stops him. A moment later, she comes into the kitchen just as naked as her boyfriend and is surprised to see Michael there. She too observes his beat-up state and asks him what happened. When Michael reveals that he was beat up and his candy was stolen, it angers Judith so much because now she has to worry about how she's going to explain it to her parents. In her anger, she slaps Michael across the face before she storms out of the kitchen while telling her boyfriend to shut up and make his sandwich when he objects to her hitting Michael. The slap Judith gives Michael is so strong that it knocks him to the ground. What she doesn't know was that her slap was the last straw. Michael's psyche, which needed more time to recover, finally breaks. Getting up from the floor, Michael adjusts his awkwardly positioned mask, which had been sitting on his head, so that it's properly over his face. He goes over to one of the drawers, opens it, and takes out a large butcher knife. Judith's boyfriend doesn't see Michael do any of this. He's busied himself with the task of making his sandwich and has his back to Michael. So the only time he knows that something is wrong is when Michael stabs him violently in the back. The unexpected attack causes the older boy's legs to give way underneath him, and he collapses to the ground. His lower jaw just misses the edge of the kitchen counter as he falls. He hits the ground and uses his hands to help maneuver his body around to face forward. It's just in time to see Michael readying the butcher knife. Before the older boy can pull the air into his lungs in order to release it as a scream, Michael slashes his throat. Now, it's too late to scream. And Michael watches quietly as Judith's boyfriend chokes on his own blood and dies. Proceeding upstairs, Michael notices that someone is in the restroom. He can see the light coming from underneath the closed door. He gives it no further attention and moves on to enter Judith's room. It's another solid minute before Judith is done in the restroom and exits. She's put on a pair of sweatpants and a top. Entering her room, she goes over to the vanity near the opposite end and begins looking for a hair clip in the center drawer. Behind Judith, a form begins to rise underneath her bed sheet. It continues to rise until it reaches full height. The bed creaks. Judith hears and starts to turn toward the bedroom door, thinking it's her boyfriend coming back into the room. However, she catches sight of the form underneath the sheets in her vanity mirror and 180s around to face that instead. It takes all of 5 seconds for Judith to go from surprised to angry. She knows who's pretending to be Casper, the friendly ghost underneath her sheet. The height gives it away. She grabs the end of the sheets that are closest to her and roughly lifts them up. Michael advances, not even giving Judith the chance to toss the sheet away and lower her hands. He's able to get in 2 stabs to Judith's stomach before her hands let go of the sheets and clamp around her wounds. She turns toward the bedroom door to run. Michael steps down off the bed and onto the floor. He sets the butcher knife down. He picks up a basketball which belonged to Judith's boyfriend from nearby and hurls it at Judith's legs. Judith is mere feet away from the door when the ball makes impact. It trips her up and sends her tumbling face first into the ground. The fact that she's on the ground and needs to recover is barely registering when the first stab to her back is delivered. Another follows, and another, and another. The onslaught doesn't stop until Judith stops moving a few moments later. When Ronald comes home from date night while Deborah goes on to her second job, he discovers the bodies. Moments later, he discovers the culprit. But it's too late to do anything. He's already been stabbed and is falling down the stairs to his death by the time that discovery is made. When Deborah arrives home in the early hours of the morning from her second job, she's surprised by what she sees. Michael is sitting outside on the front stairs, still in his ruined Halloween costume, with his baby sister Lori wrapped in his arms. Her surprise becomes concern when Michael's only response to her is, "It's okay, Mom. It's just us now." Concern ultimately peaks at terror when Deborah goes into the house and sees just what her son meant by his response. As if calling the police on her baby boy because he killed 3 people, then watching him get taken away in handcuffs, then having all sorts of people comb every square inch of her house for evidence, then having to submit to multiple Q&A interviews wasn't enough. Deborah is dealt another emotional blow a week after the murders, courtesy of Michael's assigned psychologist, Dr. Sam Loomis. It's he who tells her about the bullying that Michael was receiving at school. It's he who tells her about the skin trauma found on Michael's back and lower body. Now, what type of mother doesn't even know when her child is being bullied at school? What type of mother doesn't even know when her child has been beaten? What type of mother doesn't see that her child is in danger and needs her help? The most horrible mother in the world. That's what type. Now, her baby boy is ruined. According to Sam, Michael suffered a psychotic break on the night of the murders. Unfortunately, Michael's condition has gone from bad to worse since that night. He's gone from being semi-unresponsive to completely unresponsive. When he'll recover from this state is unknown. It is also unknown if when he recovers, he'll be the same. As days turn to weeks and weeks to months without any sign of recovery from Michael, Deborah slips further and further into a depression of her own. One night, she takes little Lori over to her big sister Penny's house. Afterward, she does something she hasn't done in what seems like forever. She buys a bottle. She takes it with her on her drive to the spot where her and Michael used to have their mother-son picnics. It's there that she takes it out and drinks it. She reminisces, speaks out loud to the memories. She laughs, she cries. And finally, she takes out the gun her late husband bought her for self-defense and uses it on herself. She's already ruined one child. She will not ruin another. 2 years later, Sam walks with a colleague down the halls of Smith Grove Sanitarium. It's the place that Michael has called home ever since that Halloween night. As the men walk, they discuss Sam leaving Michael's case. Sam feels that he's done all that he can to help Michael, and that now it's time to move on. The boy they were trying to reach is gone, and he's never coming back. A short while later, Sam has his last session with Michael. Now 12 years old, Michael is still unresponsive. Although his eyes are open, their stare is blank, and his face is neutral and emotionless. Sam begins the session as he always does, by
by asking Michael if he'd like to talk. When Michael doesn't respond, Sam tells him, "Okay, I'll talk. I'm pretty sure you're good at listening by now." Sam reveals to Michael that he's leaving his case and that the visit will be their last. He apologizes to Michael for not being able to help him, but he admits that they've tried everything. There just isn't anything else left to do. However, should something new come along, he'll be quick to try it. Sam makes a bit of small talk with Michael before he says his goodbyes and leaves. As the door shuts, a single tear begins to form at the corner of Michael's right eye.
All right, everybody, and believe it or not, that's the end of the first half. So, with that having been said, if anybody is out there, because I can see the chat, I just didn't put the chat up in this particular one. If anybody is out there, if you guys would like for me to go ahead and continue on to the second part, please go ahead and put that in the chat and let me know if you want me to continue. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and stick to the schedule, and we'll park it here for the evening and resume tomorrow evening at about the same time with part 2. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to go ahead and put in your comments, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go from there. All right. I think that was long enough. So, since I'm not seeing any responses, I guess that was enough. So, we will go ahead and we will stop this right here, right now, just before we get ready to cross that 30-minute threshold. I really hope that you guys enjoyed what you got so far. Um, I know it's an odd part to leave it off on, but I felt like I wanted to at least get through the first half. And then when we come back for the second half, that's when the fun gets started. So hopefully you will all be able to come back and check out the second part tomorrow. And that'll be getting started in between the hours of 6 and 6:30 p.m. So, with that having been said, I would like to thank you all for joining me for this first part of this pitch, 1031. I have been Paper Zombie, and I will catch you guys tomorrow for part 2.